Okay. Welcome everyone to a very special edition of It Depends, because this one is live. We are in Dallas at the DataDriven 23 conference, and I'm with my friend Manish Sood, CEO, founder, and chairman of Reltio. Manish, I'll do an introduction of him because we have so much material that we want to talk about today. So you were at Cyperion for 9 years, which then got bought by Informatica. You were in this complex space of trying to integrate customer profiles from multiple different sources. And then in 2011, correct me if I'm wrong, you started Reltio as the first cloud native SaaS MDM company.
That is correct. So, we got acquired by Informatica after spending 12 months there.
I see.
Some of the, learnings as a product manager that I had were that customers, while conceptually aligned with the idea of mastering their data from different systems, were not able to get to that output that they needed. And the limitations that they were running into were increasing number of sources that they saw in their environment, because everybody, when they started their MDM journey in early 2000s, had 5 or 6 different systems, and that was extreme complexity for them.
Wow.
Right. And you can imagine that, a decade passes by and suddenly everybody's talking about 30, 40 or 50 different systems. But now when we look back, everybody's talking about 500 different systems.
Wow.
Right. So this complexity increasing was always visible at that point in time.
Yeah.
And the severe limitation that most of these systems would run into was also clear and visible. But we wanted to figure out that how do we provide a capability that is much more flexible and can expand with their growing data and complexity needs. And that's why we thought that cloud was the best answer to solve that problem, because data is never going to reduce. It only is only going to increase.
Right.
So find a flexible platform to build it on. So our core founding principle was, we'll deliver it as a software as a service capability built on public cloud infrastructure. And this was back in 2011 where we made that decision.
Which was very early in the cloud days, because 2006 is when AWS had started. So it's only 5 years in.
Very early in their maturity cycle.
It's really impressive to see that you embarked on this journey. Today in 2023, you have over $100 million in subscription ARR. And about 500 employees?
We're actually about 400 employees.
400 employees. And you have raised about
$237 million overall in aggregate since our inception.
I see. Got it. Okay. So I'm just curious, what is the difference between master data and reference data? There's MDM. Is there an RDM also? What is going on in this space?
Good question. Reference data is a terminology that comes up in different places. If you go into financial services as an industry, their definition of reference data means securities information or instruments that they use, or any kind of counterparty information. They even refer to that as reference data.
I see.
But if you go to any other industry or vertical, reference data is essentially the type of codes or values that you have in lookup lists. So, country codes, state codes, gender codes, all of these things. But the complexity of the problem is, while it is very small and finite data, but the amount of variety that you see across different applications, even in that small area, is tremendous, because every application has its own way of defining what a drop-down list for state codes is going to be. Or even country codes, currency codes, all of these things. And if you're integrating different systems, then how do you make sure that you can make that data interoperable? Do you understand what the translation is going to be from system A to B to C and all the way up to Z? Right. And by the way, A, B, C, D won't work, because we will have to start counting numbers, because we'll run out of alphabets.
Correct. So Manish, if you take a concrete example, list of countries is reference code. So I can have a drop-down list. I have US, UK, but then in another system I have GB.
Yeah.
So now this reference
or
data.
third system may have 001.
Yes. So although we're talking about reference data, now it becomes master data. How does
So it's a I would position it as a subcategory of the overall data silo problem.
Okay.
And this area is reference data, but when you put it in the context of customer, product, supplier, asset information, then it becomes a subset of the master data problem.
Got it. I see. So now there's also this concept of multi-domain master data management. What is multi-domain?
So when you think about the different data domains that are important to a business, let's just take a very horizontal example. Customer information, product information, supplier information. Those are the three core critical data domains that are most important to any business, because it's about the customers that they sell to, what products are they selling to them, where are they procuring those products from. That sort of, in a way, defines the entire life cycle or the data value chain that they have to have a better handle on. And it doesn't matter if they have 5 applications or 500 applications. If they want to run their business efficiently, then they need to have a better handle on which customers, what products, and which suppliers are they procuring these products from.
When you started Reltio, was there one particular domain you started with and a particular industry?
So when we started Reltio, having had the previous generation background of master data management, we decided from the very beginning that we wanted this to be a horizontal capability.
Got it.
That could solve for any entity-centric information. And again, we are not a data warehouse or a lake house. We, if you think about the terminology that would be closest is, we are a hub and spoke model where we are bringing together information from multiple sources for these entities that are core to your business. So, at a very generic level, people, organizations, product, locations are sort of the universe that we decided that we would go tackle.
Got it. Okay.
And as we step into verticals, we would see derivations of that that would be used, because if you go into life sciences, you would suddenly start talking about healthcare professional, healthcare organization, plan, payer, formularies, or even the sites where they're delivering the controlled substances. Those have to be monitored and tracked.
Right.
But the base variants for those are people, organizations, product, and locations. Right? If you go into oil and gas, if somebody is tracking upstream information, they're looking at information about oil wells, which sites are the oil wells are, who has the surface lease, who has the subsurface lease, what is the production level at that oil well. But again, how do you construct a concept that would handle that kind of information? That is where we looked at what are the base entities that are going to inform that. Again, we came back to the conclusion that the world revolves around people, organizations, product, locations.
Oh, wow.
Because
very nice.
an oil well
is
has equipment that is an asset deployed at a specific location, and the owner of the lease at the surface or the subsurface is a person or an organization. So you can translate a lot of these concepts back to those 4 base types.
There is also a concept in the industry of CDP, customer data platform. Is there a difference between MDM and CDP? Where do you draw the line?
Let's take a step back. I think we have to strip out all terminology first.
Yeah, business.
We have to think about what is the problem that each one of 100%. These tools are trying to solve.
Right.
The basic problem is there are multiple sources. In order for you to do anything meaningful, you have to first bridge the gap that gets created by these silos. And you have to put together the information so that it can be a coherent, trusted data set that you can start with. There are multiple players out there trying to solve that problem. Some come in from a vertical orientation, some come in from a functional orientation. And some players like Reltio are trying to do it across all of these dimensions, horizontal.
Yeah, I see.
And CDP is a variant that comes in from a marketing perspective.
I see.
And looks at what is the core set of information that is needed for running an effective marketing outreach program. And for that, having the person level information is the most important data asset that you need to start with. So every CDP journey talks about how they will first bring that data together, then start doing activation on top of that data.
I see. Got it. Okay. So that's very clear. So thank you for explaining that. When you started Reltio, there were only 4 or 5 sources. So what I understand talking to your customers last day or so is that you read the data from different sources into your system. We'll talk about technology because I'm very curious. I understand you started with Cassandra and your own graph database, and now you've moved to a cloud native document database. But before we talk about technology, the whole concept of reading the data in certainly starts becoming quite onerous when you have so many data sources. Is there going to be a change in the way you look at the architecture?
So minor correction.
Okay.
We don't read any data from any sources.
Okay.
So the way we go and solve this problem, our core fundamental thesis was that every application has its own schema.
Yeah.
And each schema is different in some way, shape, or form. So we need in the middle a canonical representation. And that canonical representation, if you're trying to apply a third normal form or the EF chord principles, that fails. That fails miserably. Because I'll give you a simple example. In one system, you can have only one address.
Yeah.
In another system, you can have many addresses. In a third system, you have many-to-many relationships with addresses. So if you have to take in information from each one of these systems and create an aggregated, unified view, you have to be ready to receive any kind of cardinality for any type of attribute from any of these systems. Otherwise, you cannot get to a canonical representation. In the past, most of the systems, the way they tried to solve the problem, they said we will define our third normal form data model and put data into it. At which point you have to drop some pieces because it doesn't really squarely fit into this data model. So our notion was that the best representation for this with the ultimate flexibility so that we can take in all inputs from all the different sources that will be plugged in at any point in time would be to define a canonical representation using an entity graph model in the middle. So what we start with is think of it as a business representation of what a customer, product, supplier, or the different connections between these would be in an entity graph type of a construct, which is, in our case, we have simplified it to the level where as a business user, you're able to come in, you're able to define those attributes and add it to or attach it to an entity. You never have to worry about cardinality type of concepts. And then we ask every system that is there in the enterprise to start pushing their information or publishing their information into Reltio. So Reltio is surrounded by an API layer. And as soon as we receive data, we ingest it into that canonical representation. So there is a little bit of mapping involved in that canonical model, but you never have to worry about the data model structure. You never have to worry about the cardinality that comes in from your system. We absorb all of it.
Got it.
And once we absorb it, then we enable the behind the scenes work of resolving those different representations and schemas into our canonical form, and also doing entity resolution, which is essentially in simple terms known as the matching of the data. Because you have to disambiguate if it is organization information. Hewlett Packard or HP are the same companies. IBM or International Business Machines is the same kind. Coke versus Coca-Cola. Or when you come to people names, it's, Mike, Michael, on any of the variants that you will see, they are the same person, is the type of work that we do behind the scenes so that we can establish a unified ID for those records that we are ingesting and create it as a durable artifact so that even as more data is received, we are able to append more information. And for consumers, we allow them to pick and choose what slices, what contributing sources are they most interested in, because a compliance person will come in and say, across all of these sources, doesn't matter if it's 60 or 600 or 1,000, I want the full view because compliance requires me to have a full understanding. Versus a marketing person comes in, I only care about the 20 sources that give me marketing relevant information. And I want to view that detail at this point in time.
This entity graph, is the same as knowledge graph?
Well, it's rooted in that concept, but we use it as a data structure instead of providing it as like a RDF construct or something along those lines. We don't have a let's say a Gremlin API sitting on top of Reltio exposing that data, because we have used a hybrid of columnar and graph capabilities to scale it. And our experience in the past, after having looked at various technologies, was for the problem that we were trying to solve, we needed this kind of a hybrid because we were trying to scale it to an operational construct where we could serve up these types of services and the results from these services as a low latency orientation. So we needed the speed, the scale, the throughput, and do so in less than 200 milliseconds type of orientation.
I've been speaking with some of the customers, just trying to understand where they are taking the whole master data management. So a few very interesting concepts came up yesterday. The first concept was that Reltio has a very robust set of APIs, but companies are saying, could we have a widget we can embed in a website or an app? Because the issue they're saying is, let's say I move from one state to another or one country to another, my address changes. Now I have to figure out, how do I do address changes in a few dozen, maybe 100 different places? So can Reltio be that gateway and federate this? Is that...
Well, it comes back to the hub and spoke model. Because for you to go and manually change everything in the 100+ different systems that you have is impossible. You're never going to be able to catch up to that workload. And in order to automate this and create a more structured way of propagating these changes, that is where the first principle that we apply is that it doesn't matter if it's a contributing change from one application, it flows into Reltio. We do the adjudication of, is it a valid change? Is it a relevant change? Is it a change that needs to be propagated to the 600 downstream consuming systems or not? And then publish that reconciled information. So we are maintaining that ledger of all the changes that come in from all the different systems, and then provide the reconciled view. And once that reconciled view is propagated, it's available for all the consuming systems to take as input and update their records. And we send them specific keys because we will tell Salesforce, by the way, this is for record, ABC 123, whatever the Salesforce key is for that record. And this is the change that needs to be applied. So that's how we make it an API-based headless construct. But the second thing that needs to happen is every organization, as a part of their digital reorientation, is creating new experiences. They will expose a portal to a supplier or a
like
customer.
A data sharing, data exchange.
Well, not even that. Think about, if you're a consumer, let's say one of our customers, Shiseido, is here, and you are buying products off of their website. You have a change in address, you will go to their website, you will update that information.
Correct.
That's a channel that they have created
Right.
to give you
Right.
some right to update and maintain your
Correct.
information.
Right.
That change immediately flows into Reltio.
I see.
And that is
Right.
a higher trusted source than everything else because it's coming directly from the consumer.
So if I go to their store, they'll have the most, although it's a different channel, they will have the most current address.
They will have the most current address because you were the one through their digital channel that they created and gave you access to.
Right.
You made the change, it immediately is available to the point of sale system. In fact, a lot of our retail customers are using it in that manner to bridge the omni-channel universe and have the same information propagated and available across their entire enterprise.
Very nice. As I'm hearing you explain, I have like a million bulbs that are going in. For example, I like this whole idea that you said you track all the changes. So it's like a ledger. The moment I hear ledger, I'm thinking
blockchain.
Exactly. What's going on with that? Is there a role blockchain can play in this?
I think longer term, there is a role for blockchain to play, especially as you start thinking about zero-party data ownership. Which is you as a buyer or a consumer should have full ownership of your data.
Yeah.
We're not fully there today, but every organization will have to think about how to turn over the keys of the consumer data to the ultimate owner of that data.
Right.
And have them participate in that process. And that's where the blockchain type of concepts are going to be very relevant and help us create data systems that allow for zero-party ownership. But I would say that's the next 10 years type of a time frame and timeline that we are talking about.
Yeah, very interesting. Is this also dictated by the data residency laws?
Absolutely.
GDPR?
Absolutely. Data sovereignty, data privacy, and data privacy then going all the way up to the zero-party ownership is the direction that we are headed towards.
I see. Got it. Although Reltio is in the cloud, we know that a lot of large organizations especially have over 50% of their data still on premises. So how do you reconcile this hybrid environment?
Think about any business today. You have partners that you're working with that are outside your control boundary or firewall. You have SaaS applications that you're using. Even if an organization hasn't fully transitioned over to the cloud, I can bet you 100% that there are very few organizations left that are not using a SaaS application in some way, shape, or form.
Correct.
Right. So when you think about that landscape, you have on the ground applications, in the cloud applications, you have partners that you're trading with or working with or customers that are outside your control boundary. You have third-party data sources that are providing. The best way to solve and bridge all of these different types of systems is the cloud. Because if you were trying to do all of this within everything within your control boundary, inside your on-prem infrastructure, you will run into hurdles and fail with that effort. And that was, one of the biggest learnings out of the previous generation of technologies that we worked on and created these kinds of capabilities, that it really became an inhibitor to the next set of things that the customers wanted to do. So in order to create a more or I would say there is never going to be frictionless, but at least you can try and take as much friction out of the equation as you can. And in order to reduce that friction, cloud became the vehicle that was most conducive to solving this kind of a data problem, where data will come and continue to come from all these different orientations. And even from a consumer standpoint, you would need have consumers be able to access data from any of these edge orientations. And when I talk about that, you want access to it on your mobile phone. Are you sitting inside the firewall boundary of an on-prem solution? Never going to be possible. Right. So the same thing has to happen if you think about IoT or other types of orientations. The data has to be available at the edge. And even when you think about driverless cars, your profile on the car has to be available to be able to service that. And that is the same profile that you need access to when you take your car for service.
Right. So going back to this question I was coming to earlier on, which is that you are moving data to your entity graph, which the way you explained it makes sense. But then there's also a lot of emphasis on push down in the cloud, because these cloud data warehouses that did not exist when you started the company have now come of age.
Yes.
So now I see CDPs are doing all the process flow in the cloud, pushing down. Data access governance are doing policy definition in the cloud, but enforcement is in Snowflake, Databricks, BigQuery, Redshift, you name it. I see this DBT, same example. Do you see that happening for what you do?
In our case, the primary orientation that we're solving for is making this data available as an operational asset, which goes back to the low latency type of orientation.
Right.
And thinking about it as a record of one supplier, one product, one customer that you need access to in less than 100, 150 milliseconds, because you're at the point of sale or you're at the checkout, and that experience has to be tailored or informed for you. You're an audience of one at that point in time.
Right. Yeah.
Data warehouses do not yet solve that low latency problem.
Okay.
And I'm waiting for the day when there will be a universal database that handles OLTP, OLAP, all inside one single data store. We are not there yet.
Okay. Fair point. Although a lot of vendors are claiming that they're there.
Yeah, there is definitely progress in that direction, but we are still, to have full capabilities that entirely bridge those two worlds together. That hasn't fully transpired yet. And that's why our progression is that we will ride the layer cake of underlying innovation from all these other vendors while focusing on the data unification problem that is our core charter to solve.
I got it. So yesterday I went around asking some people, what questions should I ask Manish? So, and you triggered something because you said universal storage. That reminded me, one of your customers said that, we have customer record here and customer record there, and they're all different. Reltio is helping with this unification, but why can Reltio not push for a universal customer ID? For example, like in India, there's this Aadhaar project that has done it. Why can we not have that?
Yes. That's a great question. Putting sort of the government efforts aside, because in some cases, some countries, governments can mandate that we need that kind of a system. Think about the enterprise context. A lot of our customers that we work with, we are helping them establish the enterprise ID or the unified ID for each one of these data domains that they work with inside their organizations. Can we use those same capabilities to establish, Sanjeev Mohan across all of the companies shall be known by this ID? Yes, that is possible and doable, but that requires data sharing arrangements between different organizations, and especially if it is customer data, an agreement with you as well. And that is a legal question that has to be figured out first. And that's why I believe that over the next 10 years, you will see a transition towards the zero-party type of concepts, where the ultimate ownership resides with you. You decide who to give access to or take away access from, so that you are the full owner of that information. But it's done with that singular ID that will help drive it. If you think about different industries, for example, healthcare versus life sciences, both are engaging with patients. But there are some boundaries in terms of who can have access to what type of information. If it is treatment information, then you can't expose it to the life sciences organization directly. But there are different ways in which they're trying to tackle the problem. But I think directionally we are headed towards that kind of a future state where data with a unique specific identifier will be shareable.
Oh, wow.
But a lot of legal legislation also has to move forward in tandem with the desire that we see from the enterprises.
That is great. Wow. So there's so much to look forward to.
Technically, it's possible.
Yes,
right?
Correct. Yeah.
But there's a lot of ethical issues that you run into that will have to be resolved before we move in that direction.
So talking about the future, it's amazing. We've gone, I guess, 30 minutes or so into this podcast. We haven't even mentioned generative AI once. So let's pivot to that. So generative AI, yesterday talking to one of your customers, the CEO has mandated actual hard-hitting use cases. It's not like Mickey Mouse use case of give me a frequently asked questions by summarizing documents. They're asking for new drug discovery. So one of the pharmas I talked to, they have acquired millions of medical journals from like New England Journal of Medicine and various different sources. Now, what they want to do is they want to do entity extraction and train an LLM and do drug discovery, reduce the FDA approval time, like actual real life use cases. But what they're saying is that our problem is that these documents have different synonyms, different words, but that meaning is not stored in Reltio, it's stored in an ontology, or it's stored, FDA has its own stuff. How is Reltio playing a role in this generative AI space?
Well, let's separate out two things. First of all, the specific use case that you mentioned versus the use of generative AI.
Okay.
When you talk about the use case, all the medical journals, all the information, the relevant data out of those that needs to be extracted is, drugs, compounds, substances, finished products that these things go into, or people who are doing research in these areas, and what are some of the results that they're getting to. And, one of the customers that we work with, AstraZeneca, is using us to reconcile information from all these journals, all these publications, all these study results that are on the FDA site or internally within their organization, to create a master data set, a unified data set of all these drugs, compounds, substances, and researchers associated with them. Because, there is a team somewhere in Japan that is working on a particular substance, using it in the context of specific drug discovery for specific disease states. But they don't know that somebody else is also using the same substance in a different compound to apply it to a different area of research. So how do you bring that knowledge together? You have to aggregate, unify some of these core data domains into a coherent knowledge graph orientation that can then be fed into the large language models as the rich information that will further inform those large language models. The part of the generative AI that is very interesting is, first of all, the user experience that it has exposed, which has simplified the consumption model for it, and hence the prompt engineering type of discipline coming out of it. But at the same time, there are foundational models now available to everybody, right? If you were going down the path of training your own model, creating your own base data set, or 50 billion parameters that you will inform that model with, that is a very expensive exercise. And that's why I think the great thing is that these foundational models are now available to everybody as an asset to start building on top of. And what they will have to do is provide contextual information that is relevant for the problem that they're solving within their enterprise as the addition into those models. And that's where you'll be able to get the maximum value out of these models in a enterprise context.
Right.
But that requires a continuous stream of enriched, cleansed, trusted data to be fed into it for your business.
You know what's phenomenal in this conversation, and this is all unscripted, is the fact that you mentioned AstraZeneca. 2 weeks ago, I was at Big Data London. We had a panel on data products, and an AstraZeneca person said, I'm at this conference because by end of this year, I have to build 30 data products in production. And so what you just said, like in Japan, they're looking at some stuff, and in the US, if it's a data product, then there's some reconciliation.
There has to be reconciliation. Data products is not just packaging up any data set and putting an API on top of it.
Okay.
It has to be a consumable asset, which requires it to be reconciled with all the variances that you will see, so that it's a trusted asset that you can go to and get the relevant information from.
So if the LLM trains on data product and there's an accountability, it's trusted, then we can reduce hallucinations on LLMs.
Yeah, it addresses the garbage in, garbage out.
Correct. Yes, which is what we learned in our college days.
Well, every system that you will ever build will have this concept, or the problem that, it doesn't matter if it were applications. Why do applications stall in delivering a benefit? Because, there is garbage being input into those. If you have a business process, garbage in, garbage out. If you have BI analytics, we have gone through that entire development cycle where you won't get the right insights out of your BI analytics type of investments if you have garbage going into it. Right? Same thing now applies to the lake houses or the cloud data warehouses. Conceptually, they haven't changed that fundamental orientation. And guess what? All of the AI work that is being done, all the AI models that are being created, they also have a large dependency on the clean, trusted data that they will operate.
So one nagging question I had, and with due respect, was that MDM. Sometimes when people tell me, talk about MDM, they say, oh, that's so old school. We're in the cloud, we're doing AI. And what I'm understanding, talking to you, is that there's a very strong synergy between data quality to bring trusted data, MDM, data products on top, and then generative AI applications.
And I would say quality of data, not data quality. Just like you have MDM as a problematic terminology that takes you back to the old problems that you struggled with. I think we have to, first of all, strip out all the terminology. What is the fundamental problem that we are trying to solve? We are trying to get to trusted, clean, enriched data that we can use as a starting point. What will help us deliver that unified view of the data that is clean and trusted? That's the capability that we need to put in. And in fact, if you think about data quality tools, all of them spend a lot of time on, there was a variance, there was an anomaly, there was, here's the profile of the different types of garbage that you have. But none of them fix the issue. So this is not about data quality tooling. This is about quality of data that needs to be improved and delivered.
Quality of life. So talking about stripping terminology, I have another terminology question. Reverse ETL.
Well, Sanjeev, this is where we have been so good at inventing new terminology. Did you have a problem because you could not move ETL forward? I never saw anything that said forward ETL. Why do you have reverse ETL? Are we just taking data out of a data warehouse for the first time and pumping it back into applications? Is that why we came up with the terminology reverse ETL? You have to strip terminology aside and you have to focus on the core problem that you're trying to solve. If it's a data movement problem, you can take it from this direction to the next, and from that direction back to the previous originating state. We should not have to invent new terminology just to describe that construct.
Yeah, thank you so much for that clarification. Really, that's fantastic. I think we are running out of time because you have a keynote that is about to start. I have one last question. Who is the buyer of MDM? Is it business? Is it technology? Or is it everybody's problem?
We see a combination of business and technology coming together. And a lot of times our conversations don't start with MDM. Our conversations start with what is the business problem?
Yeah.
And does it require a unified view of the data?
Right.
And a lot of times, if business is leading the charge, they don't even talk about master data management as the problem.
Correct.
They talk about they need to improve the customer experience or the supplier experience or the product experience that they're trying to deliver. And the biggest hurdle that they run into, that most of the data that they need to use is fragmented, siloed, spread across multiple systems, and they need a unified view of it. And that's why I would posit that, the direction that we need to move towards is the unified view of the data, of the clean, trusted, quality data.
Right. But the person originating the conversation is the business line of business or business unit head, or is it the CDO?
We see both flavors. Where they've already gone through their internal strategic thinking, it lands in the hands of CDO or CIO to go solve as a problem.
I see.
Where they haven't yet gone through the full, discovery and discussion, it starts with the line of business owners to figure out what the solution would be for it. So we see a healthy mix of, I would say, 60-40, where 60 is IT-led, 40% is business-led.
That is good. And has that changed over the years, like in 12 years?
We initially started with more focus on the IT side, but we have seen the business involvement
getting very nice.
And in each one of our conversations, we see both stakeholders coming to the table together.
Very nice. So that finally business IT alignment is starting to take shape. Manish, we can go on forever. I have so much stuff, but thank you so much for taking the time on such a busy day when you're just about to kick off the DataDriven 23. I really appreciate your time. It's been an amazing conversation.
Well, thank you, Sanjeev, for the opportunity and really enjoyed the conversation. And maybe we'll follow up with another conversation.
Completely. Yes. My plan was to actually do this after the event so I could get some feedback about what were your key takeaways from this wonderful, highly successful conference there.
Happy to share that.
Okay. Sounds good. We'll do another one. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone. This has been absolutely amazing. My first foray into MDM space. And I'm just totally loving this whole space of what more can be done. So
we'll get you on the data unification bandwagon.
Okay, perfect. Let's do it. Thank you, everyone. Take care. See you.